Okay, and for this next video I'm going to be demonstrating or exhibiting this particular kind of USB or controller, console controller to USB adapter. Again, the purpose of this is so you can connect controllers like this to your PC with very minimal effort. You don't have to modify this end at all. There's no need to modify the original end of the controller or do any hacking of the actual controller itself to get an N64 or a PlayStation controller to work with your PC, and that's with this particular model here. This particular model I bought purposely for its ability to work with Nintendo 64 controllers. I'm personally not much of a fan of the Nintendo 64 at all, although there are a few good games on it, and I'm interested in playing it with the controller since it is such a unique controller. There really is no other controller like it ever made, with the very idiosyncratic Z button on the bottom to the very strange handle method where the right hand can move either from the D-pad to the D-pad or to the analog stick as its primary, and then of course making use of that Z trigger button. So I thought the idea of connecting an N64 controller was just a cool idea, and I'm very much interested in doing that with my computer and using emulators. So I wanted to pick one. Actually, I had a friend who wanted one. He loved Nintendo 64. He grew up with it, and I bought him one, and I bought myself one too because I was interested in it. So we're going to, on this video, take a look at this adapter, and I'll show you what it does. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is connect this adapter to the PC. I have USB ports on. Here is my PC, my current PC. Here is my monitor. Here is my keyboard and mouse. And I'm going to show you by going, first I'll connect the device to this USB port on the side for convenience. And I connected it, nothing's changing here yet. Not sure why. I did connect it just a little while ago before I'm making this video. Maybe that's why it's already recognizing it. Let's see. Let's go to the controller, game controller. Yeah, let me zoom in instead of out. I'm in the control panel in Windows XP. Game controllers. And you see it already reads it there at the top. That top one is actually the device I have connected. These other devices we'll get to later. That's a very interesting one, perhaps the most interesting of the devices, but we'll get to that one next, later. I'm going to close this in the meantime, and I'm going to disconnect this and go back to game controllers, and you'll see that it's absent. That top entry that was present before is now missing. So let me close this, and again plug this in again. Plug this USB plug back into my PC again. See if it says anything down below here where it usually says found new HID human interface device. It's saying nothing. So I'm assuming that's because I had connected it just a little while ago. So let me go back to game controllers here. I see here the 4-axis 16-button joystick. That is the device, this device being read right now. And another note on this device is that it supports two different kinds of controllers, this device. A N64 controller and a PlayStation controller. And it only supports one of them at a time. It does not support both. I bought this specifically because I wanted to get an N64 controller working. I could care less about the PlayStation compatibility because I already have an adapter, which is showcased in another video, and I'll just show that to you briefly here. This is a superior adapter in my opinion because it has two ports for PS1, or I think two controllers. Again, I'm not sure if this supports PS2 controllers. because I don't own any, so I can't test it. But I do know for a fact that it supports PS1 controllers, as I've showcased in another video. And it supports 2 at the same time. So you could have 2 people playing by this very one adapter. You don't need a second adapter for a second player. With this adapter, you do. This adapter will only work with 1 controller at a time. So if you want 2 controllers, you'll need 2 adapters. If you want 2 N64 controllers, you will need 2 of them. I actually haven't tested this with 2 N64 controllers. I'll assume it works, because I believe Windows just reads each one separately, and Windows doesn't really care. But I'm actually not certain. So, again though, this does support either PlayStation 1 or 2. Again, I'm not sure if it supports the more advanced functionality of the 2 controller, but it does support the PlayStation 1 controller, and it supports the N64 controller. So now there's a switch here on the side. You see it toggles the lights. This right light indicates that the N64 controller is the selected controller, and this left light indicates that the PlayStation 1 controller is the selected controller. So I'm going to be selecting the N64 controller, since that is the controller of interest in this video. Although I will show and test the PlayStation 1 controller anyhow. I don't even know if I've ever used a PlayStation 1 controller with this device, since I have the other device that I used, which I just showed, that blue one. I'm going to start by connecting again. Again, the main purpose of this video is to demonstrate how it is possible, with minimal effort actually, to connect a N64 or PlayStation controller, pretty much a console gaming controller, with a very different end, very different wiring, and get it to work on a PC for the purpose of playing through video game emulators. I cannot tolerate using a mouse and keyboard, which I find absolutely disgusting to play video games with, much less console video games with. So I really enjoy using these devices, and there are very few videos on YouTube about these, so I thought I'd make my own. So here is the N64 controller, and unlike the PlayStation video, which I showcased a bunch of different various controllers, I only own one N64 controller, or at least one that works. I think I own another one, and I think it does not work. I'm not sure if it works actually. Maybe I'll look for it in a little while, and if I have it, I'll append it to the end of this video. But for now, I believe I only have one working N64 controller. So I'm going to plug it in. N64 controller plugged in. I will plug it into the N64 port on this PlayStation and N64 to USB device for the PC. A little awkward with one hand to do this, but I think I'll manage. And I did. Okay, so now I'll go to the control panel again, and I'm going to actually select this time the 4-axis 16-button joystick, as it says here, which indicates the input device based on this USB converter, USB adapter. So now I will place the controller in my hand and untangle the wire a little bit so I can show you how this Windows detects this device. Awkward to get this large controller able to see both. Let me move this window, this joystick property window, up to the top so I can more readily hold the controller while showing you what it way it detects. And I'd better grip it a little better here. Alright, so up, and it's not working, is it? Oh yes, it is. If you notice, up does not show on the XY axis. It shows as button 13. And since these are digital buttons, it doesn't matter anyhow. Down maps to 16, right maps to 13, and left maps to 16, Right maps to 14, down maps to 15, and up maps to 13. So you can see as I spin in a circle here, I am lighting them up. Now I'll move the analog around. The analog, of course, being the most interesting button on the N64 controller. It's almost the most hated button, perhaps. Certainly I didn't really like the very high up analog and that little flimsy, like a toothpick. I mean, this controller really is not... It leaves a lot to... While it was innovative and interesting, it was also bizarre and... you know, you really did. There's a lot of detractors this controller. I am one of them. At least it had the good quality pad like a Super Nintendo controller. But of course, you know, these 6 buttons. The lineup is great, but why they made those little, the so-called C button with these other up, down, left, right for the camera. I mean, they should have made them the same size as these buttons. The Z button is interesting to add, very idiosyncratic, very unusual, interesting button though. I like the idea of buttons actually on the underside of the controller, so that while the thumb is used, there's an actual button on the underside. I'd like to see actual controllers where a thumb is on an analog stick and there's, you know, like 3 or 4 buttons on the back. All the fingers get to be used on the back. There's no controller like that currently, but be an interesting kind of controller. Now let me get back to this this video here with this controller. You see how the analog, as I move it up, down, left, right, it moves around in this box very nicely. Again, there's a start lights up here, and I'll go to these other buttons here, A and B. You can see them lighting up, I think, on 5 and 6. Here are those C buttons, and the left and right bumpers. And I don't know if I used the Z button here, but Z button is mapping to, I don't know what number that is, but 11. So the buttons are reading. All the buttons and everything seems to read on Windows just fine. So now I'm going to show you another advanced function here on this controller. When getting this set up with emulators, the analog stick usually will not work properly. The reason why is you actually have to go in here and you have to select calibrate, and you have to calibrate this analog stick. Welcome to the device calibration wizard. Use this wizard to calibrate the axes of your game controller, and this is specifically for the analog stick on the Nintendo 64 controller. You need to use this to get it to work right. Otherwise, it will not function properly. Now, I already calibrated it, so I'm not going to go through the process again. But if you buy one of these devices and your analog stick is working bad in the game, it's not responding well, that's because you need to calibrate it first. So let me get out of this menu, and I'm going to launch a N64 emulator called Project 64, which is the best one that I know in existence. I think it is the best. I'll open a ROM, and I'll open Mario Kart. I don't have many games loaded. I barely play this system. In fact, I've not beaten any Nintendo 64 games ever. Shows you how little I've played the system. I'd like to play it more, but I don't know, I just keep going back to other systems. So press the start button. So here's the start button, and it works fine. Select the game. I'm using the analog here. You can see I could also use the digital pad, the digital directional pad to select the game. I'll push A to pick one-player game. Mario GP, I'll pick 50 cc's. Okay. Select the player. And I pick Toad. And just pick Mushroom Cup. And I'm not going to be able to play this well with one hand here, but I'll try. I'm not really focused on playing well. You see the thing actually